In the glittering Riviera Hotel, where the Mediterranean sparkles and secrets simmer, a brutal murder shatters the elegance. Edward Langley lies dead, a letter opener in his chest, and Hercule Poirot's holiday turns into a deadly puzzle. A hidden cache of diamonds, a cryptic note, and a missing maid point to a web of greed and betrayal. As masked guests dance at a gala, Poirot unravels the lies of a scorned widow, a secretive doctor, and a heartbroken actress. With time running out, can he unmask the killer before another strike? Dive into a tale of passion, deception, and Poirot's brilliant mind. Chapter 1. Arrival at the Riviera. The train from Paris to Nice swayed gently, its rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the restless energy of Hercule Poirot's mind. He sat in his first-class compartment, his small, immaculate suitcase stowed above, his hands folded neatly over the silver handle of his cane. His moustache, waxed to perfection, gleamed in the sunlight that streamed through the window, catching the glint of the Mediterranean beyond. Poirot had come to the Riviera for a holiday, a rare indulgence for a man whose little grey cells were seldom idle. Yet, as he adjusted his pristine Homburg hat, he felt a faint prickle of anticipation, as if the air itself whispered of secrets. The Riviera Hotel loomed into view as the taxi wound up the coastal road, its white facade dazzling against the azure sea. A grand edifice of marble and glass, it promised luxury and discretion to a clientele of aristocrats, tycoons, and those who wished to be seen, or not. Poirot alighted, his polished shoes clicking on the cobblestones, and was greeted by a porter whose deference was as polished as the hotel's chandeliers. At the reception, Monsieur Dubois, the manager, extended a nervous smile, his eyes darting as if expecting trouble. "Monsieur Poirot, an honour," he said, his voice smooth but betrayed by a slight tremor. Poirot noted the man's manicured hands, the faint sheen of perspiration on his brow. A man, perhaps, with more to manage than mere guests. The lobby was a study in opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across marble floors, and the air carried the scent of jasmine and wealth. Poirot's keen eyes scanned the guests mingling there. Lady Evelyn Carrington, a widow of formidable presence, stood near a gilded mirror, her diamonds flashing colder than her grey eyes. Her black silk dress spoke of mourning, but her posture suggested defiance. Dr. Felix Reinhardt, a German neurologist with a lean face and piercing gaze, lingered by a palm, his fingers drumming an impatient rhythm. And then there was Miss Clara Beaumont, a young actress whose golden curls and infectious laugh drew every eye, though Poirot noted a brittleness to her gaiety, as if it were a performance nearing its final act. Poirot settled into a wicker chair on the terrace, a tisane steaming before him, the sea a shimmering expanse below. He sipped, savouring the herbal warmth, and observed the hotel's rhythm, waiters gliding silently, guests exchanging murmured confidences, the distant clink of champagne flutes. It was a world of surfaces, polished to perfection, yet Poirot knew that beneath such gloss lay the grit of human nature. He had not come seeking a mystery, but mysteries, he reflected, had a way of finding him. As dusk painted the sky in hues of lavender and gold, a piercing scream shattered the evening's calm. Heads turned, glasses paused mid-air. A maid, her apron askew, stumbled onto the terrace from the east wing, her face ashen. "Monsieur, Madame," she gasped, her voice trembling. "It's Monsieur Langley. He's dead." The terrace erupted in whispers. Poirot set down his tisane, his eyes narrowing. Edward Langley, he recalled, was an English businessman, brusque and self-assured, who had dined alone the previous evening, his table littered with papers and a scowl. Poirot rose, his movements precise, and followed the maid, ignoring the curious stares of the guests. The Riviera's sheen had cracked, and Hercule Poirot, sensed that his holiday was over before it had truly begun. Chapter 2. The Body in Room 312. The Riviera Hotel, so radiant in the Mediterranean sunlight, seemed to dim as Hercule Poirot followed the trembling maid through its opulent corridors. The air, heavy with the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers, carried a new note of unease. The maid, whose name Poirot learned was Marie, led him to the east wing, her steps hurried and her hands wringing the hem of her apron. Behind them, the murmur of curious guests faded, replaced by the soft creak of the hotel's mahogany floors. Poirot's small, precise figure moved with purpose, his cane tapping a steady rhythm, his eyes alert to every detail, the flicker of a gas lamp, the slight misalignment of a framed seascape, the faint smudge of a fingerprint on a brass doorknob. Room 312 was at the end of a hushed corridor, its door ajar, guarded by a young porter who looked as though he might bolt at any moment. Marie hesitated, her face pale, and whispered, "In there, monsieur. I found him, just as he is." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable, and stepped inside, his senses sharpened like a blade. Edward Langley lay sprawled across the crimson carpet, his body angled unnaturally, as if he had stumbled backward in his final moments. A letter opener, its silver handle gleaming dully, protruded from his chest, a dark stain spreading across his white shirt. The room was otherwise orderly, the bed neatly made, the curtains drawn to reveal a locked balcony door, the air tinged with the faint aroma of brandy. On the bedside table sat a half-empty glass, its contents catching the lamplight. Langley's face, frozen in a grimace of surprise, suggested he had known his attacker, or at least had not expected the fatal blow. Poirot stood motionless for a moment, his head tilted, absorbing the scene. His little grey cells, as he so often called them, were already at work, cataloguing every detail. The letter opener was an elegant piece, likely from the hotel's own stationery set, its blade sharp, but not overly long, a weapon of convenience rather than design. The absence of blood spatter on the walls or furniture intrigued him. The strike had been precise, the body undisturbed after the act. He knelt, careful not to touch anything, and noted a faint smudge of red lipstick on the rim of the brandy glass. It was a detail that seemed to whisper of intimacy, or perhaps deception. The porter, still hovering by the door, cleared his throat nervously. "Monsieur Dubois sent for the police, sir. They'll be here soon." Poirot did not turn, his attention fixed on a small, torn scrap of paper half hidden beneath the bed. He retrieved it with a handkerchief, holding it to the light. In a hurried scrawl, it read, "Meet me at midnight." The ink was fresh, the paper crisp, suggesting it had been written recently. Poirot tucked it into his pocket, his mind racing. Footsteps announced the arrival of Inspector Giraud, a wiry man with a moustache that aspired, but failed, to rival Poirot's own. His uniform was impeccable, but his manner brusque, as if he resented the very air Poirot breathed. "Monsieur Poirot," Giraud said, his tone clipped. "I was not informed you were in Nice. This is a police matter, non?" Poirot rose, his smile polite but sharp. "Mon cher inspector, I am here as a guest, nothing more. But since I am present, permit me to observe. The scene, it speaks, if one knows how to listen." Giraud snorted, striding to the body with the confidence of a man who believed all mysteries were solved by authority alone. "A clear case," he declared, gesturing at Langley's corpse. The man was a businessman, oui? Debts, enemies, perhaps a jealous lover. We'll have the culprit by morning. Poirot's eyes twinkled with something akin to amusement. "Clarity, Inspector, is often the veil of error. Consider the letter opener. Why such a weapon? It is not the choice of a calculated killer, but of one seized by passion or opportunity." Giraud waved a dismissive hand, turning to instruct his men to photograph the scene. Poirot, undeterred, continued his examination, noting the absence of defensive wounds on Langley's hands. The man had not fought back, which suggested trust or surprise. The room's furnishings offered further clues. A leather-bound notebook lay on the desk, its pages filled with figures and cryptic abbreviations. Business dealings, perhaps, but Poirot suspected more. A single cufflink, gold with an emerald inlay, rested near the inkstand, its partner missing. Had Langley lost it in a struggle, or had it been left deliberately? Poirot's gaze swept to the balcony door, its lock intact, the key still in place. No one had entered or exited that way unless they possessed a duplicate key, a possibility he filed away for later. Marie, still lingering near the door, watched Poirot with wide eyes. "Monsieur, I only came to turn down the bed," she stammered. He was already like that. "I swear it." Poirot's expression softened, though his questions were precise. "Tell me, Mademoiselle Marie, did you see anyone in the corridor? Hear anything unusual?" She shook her head, then hesitated. "There was a sound, like a chair falling just before I entered, but no one was here." Poirot nodded, dismissing her gently. The chair, toppled near the desk, was indeed out of place, its legs splayed as if kicked aside. He crouched again, examining the carpet beneath it. A faint indentation suggested something heavy had rested there briefly. A bag, perhaps, or a case. The absence of such an item now was telling. Someone had removed something from the room. But what? Captain Hastings, who had joined Poirot at the Riviera for a much-needed holiday, burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "Good Lord, Poirot, what a ghastly business! Poor Langley, stabbed of all things! Who'd do such a thing in a place like this?" His earnestness, as always, amused Poirot, though he valued Hastings' loyalty above all. "Mon ami," Poirot replied, "in a place like this, where wealth and secrets mingle, such things are not so surprising. But the method, the letter opener, it is personal, no? A crime of the heart, perhaps?" Hastings frowned, peering at the body. "Personal? You mean a woman? That lipstick on the glass could be a clue, eh?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The lipstick, yes, it speaks. But of whom and why? We must learn more of Monsieur Langley's life and his enemies." Giraud, overhearing, scoffed. "Enemies? The man was a shark in business. I've already had word from London. He owed money to half the city. Likely some creditor followed him here." Poirot inclined his head, as if conceding the point, but his mind was elsewhere. The lipstick, the note, the missing cufflink, these were not the hallmarks of a simple debt collection. This was a crime woven with subtler threads. Poirot turned his attention to the bedside table, where a silver cigarette case lay beside the brandy glass. It was engraved with the initials E.L., Langley's presumably, but its lid was slightly ajar, revealing a single cigarette, its tip stained faintly red. Another trace of lipstick, or something else. Poirot made a mental note to have it analysed, though he doubted Giraud's men would think to do so. The room's silence was broken by the arrival of Monsieur Dubois, the hotel manager, whose nervous tic had grown more pronounced. "Monsieur Poirot, this is a disaster," he whispered, glancing at Giraud's men as they dusted for fingerprints. "The Riviera's reputation. Our guests will flee." Poirot regarded him coolly. "Monsieur Dubois, a man is dead. The reputation of your hotel is secondary. But tell me, did you know Monsieur Langley well?" Dubois fidgeted, his fingers smoothing his tie. "Not well. No. He was a frequent guest, always demanding, always with business associates. I saw him last night in the salon, arguing with a lady, Lady Carrington, I believe." Poirot's eyebrows rose slightly. "Arguing, you say? About what?" "Something about investments, I think. I didn't hear much, but she was displeased." Dubois' voice dropped. as if fearful of being overheard. Poirot filed this away, his mind conjuring an image of Lady Evelyn Carrington, her icy demeanour and glittering diamonds, a woman of means, but perhaps not of patience. As Giraud's men began to remove the body, Poirot took a final survey of the room. The locked balcony, the orderly desk, the toppled chair, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to align. He stepped into the corridor, where Hastings waited, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "What now, Poirot? Do we question the guests?" Poirot adjusted his hat, his eyes gleaming. "Oui, Hastings, we question. But first, we listen. The Riviera Hotel is a stage, and its players have secrets. The lipstick, the note, the missing cufflink. These are the props of our drama. We must discover their meaning before the curtain falls." Outside, the Mediterranean sparkled under the moon, its beauty a stark contrast to the darkness within room 312. Poirot felt the familiar thrill of the chase, his holiday forgotten. Edward Langley's death was no mere accident of fate. It was a story written in blood, and Hercule Poirot intended to read every word. Chapter 3. The Guests and Their Secrets. The morning sun bathed the Riviera Hotel in a golden glow, but its warmth did little to dispel the chill that had settled over its guests. The news of Edward Langley's murder had spread like a mist, cloaking the hotel in whispers and sidelong glances. Hercule Poirot, seated in the hotel's elegant breakfast room, sipped his café au lait, his eyes moving methodically over the assembled company. The clink of porcelain and the murmur of subdued conversation formed a delicate backdrop, but Poirot's attention was fixed on the undercurrents, the tightened lips, the averted gazes, the hands that trembled ever so slightly around silver teaspoons. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful companion, sat opposite, his plate of eggs untouched. "I say, Poirot," he whispered, leaning forward. "This place feels like a powder keg. Everyone's on edge. Do you think the killer's still here, bold as brass?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Mon cher Hastings, the killer is most certainly here. A crime such as this, impulsive, yet precise, does not belong to the stranger who flees. It is woven into the fabric of this hotel, its guests, its secrets. We must now unravel the threads." Poirot had requested a private room for his inquiries, and Monsieur Dubois, eager to restore order, had provided a small salon, overlooking the sea. Its walls were adorned with pale blue silk, its windows open to the salt breeze, but the elegance did nothing to ease the tension of those summoned. Poirot began with Lady Evelyn Carrington, whose entrance was as regal as it was guarded. She wore a high-necked dress of dove-grey silk, her diamonds replaced by a single pearl brooch, as if acknowledging the sombre occasion. Her grey eyes met Poirot's with a challenge, but he noted the faint tightening of her jaw. "Lady Carrington," Poirot began, his voice smooth as the silk on the walls. "You were acquainted with Monsieur Langley, were you not?" She inclined her head, her posture rigid. "Acquainted, yes. He was a business associate. We had dealings regarding an investment in a shipping venture." Her tone was clipped, offering no more than necessary. Poirot leaned forward, his hands folded neatly. "And these dealings, they were amicable?" A flicker of unease crossed her face, quickly masked. "Not entirely. Langley was unreliable. He promised returns that never materialized. We argued, yes, but I assure you, Monsieur Poirot, I was in my room all evening, reviewing correspondence." Poirot nodded, his expression bland, but his eyes sharp. "And this argument, it took place in the salon, I understand?" Witnesses noted raised voices. Lady Carrington's lips thinned. "A minor disagreement, nothing more. I retired early." Poirot made a mental note of her evasiveness, recalling Dubois' mention of the heated exchange. He thanked her politely, allowing her to withdraw, her steps measured but swift. Next came Dr. Felix Reinhardt, whose lean frame seemed to carry an invisible weight. His dark suit was immaculate, but his fingers fidgeted with a silver cigarette lighter, betraying his nerves. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his German accent clipped, "I am a man of science, not scandal. I barely knew Langley." Poirot tilted his head, studying the doctor's intense blue eyes. "Yet you were seen speaking with him 2 nights ago, doctor, in the hotel's library. A conversation, perhaps, of some import." Reinhardt's lighter clicked shut. "A passing exchange. He asked about my work, neurology, the study of the brain. He seemed curious, nothing more." Poirot's smile was polite but probing. "And last night, where were you at the hour of midnight?" Reinhardt's gaze flickered to the window. "In the library, reading journals. I am preparing a paper for a conference in Berlin." Poirot noted the precision of the answer, as if rehearsed, and the absence of any witness to confirm it. He dismissed the doctor with a nod, his mind cataloguing the man's unease. Miss Clara Beaumont entered last, a vision in a pale green dress that clung to her youthful figure. Her golden curls were slightly dishevelled, and her eyes, red-rimmed, suggested tears recently shed. She sank into the chair, clutching a lace handkerchief. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot," she began, her voice tremulous. "It's too awful. Poor Edward. I can't believe he's gone." Her distress seemed genuine, but Poirot's keen eye caught the calculated pause before her words, as if she were measuring their effect. "Mademoiselle Beaumont," Poirot said gently, "you were close to Monsieur Langley, were you not?" She dabbed her eyes, nodding. We were friends. More than friends for a time. He was charming, you see, so full of plans. But it ended weeks ago, amicably. I swear it." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but insistent. "And last night, where were you when Monsieur Langley met his end?" Clara's fingers twisted the handkerchief. "In my room, practicing lines for my next role. I'm to play Juliet in London next month." Her voice wavered, and Poirot noted the absence of any script in her room when he had glanced through her open door earlier. "You did not see him then, after dinner?" he pressed. She shook her head, too quickly, her eyes darting to the floor. Poirot let the silence linger, knowing it often pried loose truths. As Clara left, Hastings, who had been scribbling notes, looked up. "Dash it, Poirot, they all sound plausible, but there's something off about each of them. Lady Carrington's too cold, Reinhardt's too cagey, and Clara, well, she's playing a part, isn't she?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Exactement, Hastings. Each tells a story, but none tells the whole. The truth lies in what they do not say, in the gaps between their words." Poirot's next move was to speak with the staff. In the hotel's bustling kitchen, he found the porter, Pierre, polishing silver with a vigour that suggested he wished to scrub away the morning's events. Pierre was young, with a nervous energy that made his hands shake. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, glancing around. "I only saw Monsieur Langley at dinner." He was alone, looking at papers, muttering to himself. Poirot's eyebrows rose. "Muttering? Of what, precisely?" Pierre hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Something about a delivery, monsieur," he said. "If they don't come through, there'll be trouble." I thought he meant business, you know. Poirot nodded, his mind turning to the scrap of paper from Langley's room. Meet me at midnight. A delivery, perhaps, that had gone terribly wrong. As Poirot left the kitchen, he overheard a hushed exchange near the service stairs. Marie, the maid who had discovered the body, was speaking to a bellboy, her voice low but urgent. "I told you, I saw it. A package, wrapped in cloth, in his room. He was so secretive about it." The bellboy shushed her, noticing Poirot's approach, and the two scurried apart. Poirot's moustache twitched. A package, another piece of the puzzle, hidden in plain sight. Returning to the salon, Poirot stood by the window, gazing at the sea. The Riviera Hotel was a microcosm of ambition and deceit, its guests bound by invisible ties of greed, love, or vengeance. Lady Carrington's financial loss, Reinhardt's guarded demeanour, Clara's broken romance. Each was a motive, yet none felt complete. And the package Marie mentioned, what was its significance? Poirot's little grey cells buzzed, arranging and rearranging the facts like pieces on a chessboard. Hastings joined him, his face eager. What's next, Poirot? Shall we search Langley's room again? Poirot turned, his expression serene but determined. Non, Hastings. First, we observe the living. Tonight is the hotel's gala, a masquerade of elegance. Our suspects will be there, their masks both literal and figurative. We shall watch and we shall listen. The truth, mon ami, is a shy creature, but it cannot hide forever. The sea sparkled beyond, indifferent to the drama within. Poirot adjusted his tie, his mind already anticipating the evening's revelations. The game was afoot, and Hercule Poirot was its master. Chapter 4. The Hidden Package. The Riviera Hotel buzzed with preparations for the evening's gala, a masquerade ball that promised to cloak its guests in both silk and secrecy. Hercule Poirot, however, was preoccupied with a more pressing task. The scrap of paper from Edward Langley's room, "Meet me at midnight," and the maid Marie's whispered mention of a mysterious package gnawed at his mind. His little grey cells demanded answers, and Poirot suspected that room 312 held secrets, yet uncovered. With Captain Hastings in tow, he resolved to search the room once more, this time with a keener eye. The corridor to the east wing was quiet, the morning's chaos replaced by an eerie stillness. Poirot, his cane tapping softly, paused at the door of room 312, now sealed with a police ribbon that Inspector Giraud's men had hastily applied. "Really, Poirot," Hastings muttered, glancing nervously up and down the hall. "Is this quite proper? Giraud will have a fit if he catches us." Poirot's moustache curved upward. "Mon cher Hastings, the truth does not wait for permission. Besides, the good inspector is occupied with his theories. Most of them, alas, incorrect." With a deft movement, Poirot slipped beneath the ribbon and unlocked the door, using a master key procured from a reluctant Monsieur Dubois under the pretense of inspecting the room's plumbing, a fiction that had amused Hastings immensely. Inside, the room was much as they had left it, though the body had been removed, leaving only a faint chalk outline on the crimson carpet. The air carried a stale trace of brandy and the metallic tang of blood, a reminder of the violence that had unfolded here. Poirot began his search with methodical precision, his gloved hands moving over every surface. The desk, with its leather-bound notebook, yielded nothing new. The cryptic figures within suggested business dealings, but nothing specific enough to point to a motive. The bedside table, where the brandy glass had stood, was now bare, its contents taken by Giraud's men for analysis. Poirot's gaze fell on the bookshelf, a modest affair holding a few novels and a guide to the Riviera. He ran his fingers along the spines, pausing at a worn copy of Les Fleurs du Mal. It felt heavier than it should. With a gentle tug, Poirot removed the book and opened it, revealing a hollowed-out compartment. Inside lay a small velvet pouch, its drawstring tied tightly. He opened it carefully, spilling its contents onto the desk. A handful of uncut diamonds, their rough surfaces glinting dully in the lamplight. Tucked within the pouch was a folded note, written in the same hurried scrawl as the scrap found earlier. It read, "Deliver to R at the gala." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "R," he murmured. "Reinhardt, perhaps? Or another player in this dangerous game?" Hastings, peering over his shoulder, let out a low whistle. "Good heavens, Poirot! Diamonds! Langley was mixed up in something shady, wasn't he?" Poirot nodded, his expression grave. "Oui, mon ami. These are not mere trinkets. They are the currency of greed, and greed, I fear, is the root of our mystery." He replaced the pouch in the book and returned it to the shelf, ensuring no trace of their discovery remained. "We must keep this secret, Hastings. The killer may yet seek these stones. As they left the room, Poirot's mind churned. The diamonds suggested smuggling, a trade that Langley's brusque demeanour and financial troubles made plausible. But who was R? Dr. Reinhardt's guarded nature made him a candidate, yet Poirot sensed the answer was not so simple. The gala, with its promise of masks and anonymity, would be the perfect stage for such a delivery, and perhaps for further revelations. That evening, the Riviera's ballroom was a vision of splendour. Chandeliers cast a warm glow over swirling gowns and black ties, the air alive with the strains of a waltz and the clink of champagne flutes. Guests wore masks of velvet and feathers, their identities half concealed, their laughter tinged with the nervous edge of recent events. Poirot, impeccable in a tailored tuxedo, his own mask a simple black domino, moved through the crowd with the grace of a cat, his eyes missing nothing. Lady Evelyn Carrington stood near a marble pillar, her silver mask accentuating the cold fire of her eyes. Her gown, a deep sapphire, shimmered with understated elegance, but Poirot noted the way her fingers clutched her fan, betraying tension. Dr. Felix Reinhardt, his mask a stark white, danced stiffly with a young woman, his movements precise but lacking warmth. Miss Clara Beaumont, in a crimson gown that matched her painted lips, flitted from partner to partner, her laughter bright but brittle. Poirot watched her closely, recalling her tearful denials and the absence of a script in her room. As the orchestra struck up a lively foxtrot, Poirot's attention was drawn to a man in a dark suit and a plain black mask, lingering near the orchestra. His movements were furtive, his eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for someone. Poirot edged closer, weaving through the dancers, but the man slipped through a side door into the hotel's garden. Poirot followed, his steps silent on the polished floor, and entered the moonlit maze of hedges beyond. The garden was a labyrinth of shadows, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air. Poirot moved cautiously, his senses alert, but the man had vanished among the twisting paths. A rustle of leaves made him pause, but it was only a night-bird, startled by his presence. Frustrated but undeterred, Poirot returned to the ballroom, his mind turning over the stranger's purpose. Was he R, or another piece of Langley's shadowy dealings? Back inside, the gala continued, but a new disturbance rippled through the crowd. Monsieur Dubois, his face pale, approached Poirot, his voice low. "Monsieur, a problem. Marie, the maid. She has not been seen since this afternoon." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "Not seen? Where was she last?" Dubois gestured toward the east wing. "She was cleaning rooms, but her cart was found abandoned near the service stairs. I fear something has happened." Poirot's heart quickened. Marie, who had spoken of a package, who had seen something in Langley's room, her disappearance was no coincidence. He turned to Hastings, who had joined him, his mask askew in his excitement. "Hastings, we must act swiftly. Marie's absence is a thread we cannot ignore. She knows something, and someone wishes her silenced." As the music swelled, Poirot's gaze swept the ballroom once more. The masks, the diamonds, the secrets, they were all part of a tapestry, and the missing maid was a vital stitch. The gala, with its glittering facade, was the stage for the next act, and Hercule Poirot was determined to uncover its players before the night was through. Chapter 5. The Disappearance of Marie. The Riviera Hotel's gala continued to swirl in a kaleidoscope of music and masked faces, but Hercule Poirot's mind was far from the festivities. The news of Marie's disappearance, delivered by the anxious Monsieur Dubois, had sharpened his focus to a razor's edge. The maid, with her trembling voice and whispered mention of a mysterious package, was a key to the puzzle of Edward Langley's murder. Her absence now suggested a second act of violence, or at the very least, an attempt to silence a witness. Poirot, his black domino mask still in place, excused himself from the ballroom, motioning for Captain Hastings to follow. "Come, mon ami," he said, his voice low. "We must find Mademoiselle Marie before the trail grows cold." The hotel's service corridors, hidden behind the grandeur of the public spaces, were a stark contrast, narrow, dimly lit, with the faint smell of polish and damp stone. Poirot's cane tapped softly as he navigated the labyrinthine passages. Hastings, trailing with a mix of determination and unease. "I say, Poirot," Hastings whispered, "do you think Marie's been, well, done in? It's grim, isn't it? 2 crimes in one night?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the half-light. "Grim, yes, but not yet certain. Marie may be alive, and if so, she holds secrets that someone fears. We must be swift." Their first stop was the attic, where the staff quarters were tucked beneath the hotel's sloping roof. Marie's room was a modest affair, its door ajar, revealing a scene of disarray. A narrow bed was unmade, its sheets tangled as if someone had left in haste. A drawer in the small dresser hung open, spilling a few personal items: a comb, a ribbon, a cheap locket. On the dresser, a photograph caught Poirot's eye. Marie, smiling shyly, stood beside a young man with sharp features and dark eyes, the same man Poirot had glimpsed near the orchestra at the gala. The resemblance was unmistakable, and Poirot's mind raced. "Her brother, perhaps," he murmured, "or a lover. This man is no stranger to our mystery." Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, pointed to a shawl crumpled on the floor. "Looks like she left in a hurry, Poirot. Or was taken." Poirot nodded, his gloved fingers tracing the edge of the dresser. A faint smudge of powder, talcum perhaps, suggested a struggle, though no blood or overt signs of violence were present. He opened the locket, finding a tiny inscription. "To M, from J." Another initial, another thread. "J," Poirot mused. "Not R, but perhaps connected. We must find this man." Leaving the attic, Poirot sought out the bellboy who had been whispering with Marie earlier. They found him, a lanky youth named Etienne, polishing brass in the service pantry. His eyes widened at Poirot's approach, and he stammered, "Monsieur, I know nothing." Poirot's smile was disarming, but his gaze was steel. "Mon jeune ami, you know more than you say. Marie spoke to you of a package in Monsieur Langley's room. What did she see? And why is she now gone?" Etienne's hands trembled, the polishing cloth slipping to the floor. "She was scared, monsieur. After finding him, she said she saw something she shouldn't. A package, wrapped in cloth, hidden under his bed. She didn't touch it, I swear, but she was afraid someone saw her looking." Poirot pressed further, his voice gentle but insistent. "And this man in the photograph, who is he?" Etienne's face paled. "Her brother, Jacques. He's not a good sort. Works the docks in Marseille, sometimes comes here. I saw him last night, near the gala, but he left on the late train." Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings, who was already scribbling notes. "Marseille," Poirot said softly. "A lead, Hastings. This Jacques may be our stranger from the garden." He turned back to Etienne. "Did Marie say anything else? Anything about the package or who it was for?" Etienne shook his head, but his eyes darted to the side, a telltale sign of withheld truth. Poirot let it pass for now, knowing fear could loosen tongues later. Their search led them next to the service stairs, where Marie's cleaning cart stood abandoned, a bucket tipped over, its contents soaking the stone floor. Poirot knelt, examining the area. A single hairpin, bent out of shape, lay near the base of the stairs. "Hers, perhaps," he said, pocketing it with his handkerchief. The stairs descended to the hotel's basement, a warren of storage rooms and utility spaces rarely seen by guests. Poirot's instincts urged him downward, the air growing cooler and mustier with each step. In the basement, The flickering light of a single bulb revealed crates of wine, stacks of linens, and dusty furniture. Poirot moved silently, his senses alert. A faint scuff mark on the floor led to a storage room tucked behind a pile of crates. The door was locked, but Poirot, with a hairpin of his own and a dexterity that surprised Hastings, coaxed it open. Inside, bound and gagged but alive, was Marie. Her eyes widened with relief as Poirot untied her, her breathing ragged. "Monsieur, thank God," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Poirot offered her a sip of water from a flask Hastings carried, his manner calm but urgent. "Mademoiselle Marie, you are safe now, but you must tell me everything. Who did this to you, and why?" Marie's story came in halting bursts. After finding Langley's body, she'd noticed a cloth-wrapped package under his bed, partially open, revealing a glint of something. Diamonds, she thought. She hadn't touched it, but someone had seen her lingering in the room. Later, as she cleaned near the east wing, a man had grabbed her, his face masked by a scarf. It was Jacques, she admitted, tears welling. "My own brother. He said I'd seen too much, that I'd ruin everything. He tied me up here, said he'd come back after the gala." Poirot's mind raced. Jacques, the stranger from the garden, was tied to the diamonds and to Langley's murder. But was he the killer, or merely a pawn? "This package," Poirot pressed. "Did you see who it was meant for?" Marie shook her head. "No, but Jacques mentioned a name. R. He said R would be at the gala, waiting." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The note from the hollowed book, delivered to R at the gala, now had a witness, however frightened. Hastings helped Marie to her feet, his expression a mix of relief and indignation. "Your own brother, Marie. What's he mixed up in?" Marie's voice broke. "He's always been trouble, smuggling, gambling. He worked with Langley sometimes, moving things across the border. I didn't know it was this." Poirot guided Marie back to the main hotel, entrusting her to Monsieur Dubois with strict instructions to keep her safe. As they returned to the gala, the music now jarring against the gravity of their discovery, Poirot's thoughts were a whirl of connections. Jacques, the diamonds, the mysterious R. The pieces were aligning, but the picture remained incomplete. Inspector Giraud, who had been summoned by Dubois, met them in the lobby, his face a mask of irritation. "Monsieur Poirot, you interfere again. I have arrested Dr. Reinhardt. Witnesses place him near Langley's room at midnight." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Mon cher inspector, you grasp at shadows. The doctor is not our man. Marie's testimony points to another. A smuggler, perhaps, with motives tied to those diamonds." Giraud scoffed, but Poirot's certainty was unshaken. The gala, still in full swing, held the key to unmasking R, and Poirot intended to be there when the truth stepped into the light. Chapter 6. The Gala's Revelation. The Riviera Hotel's ballroom pulsed with the rhythm of a tango, its notes weaving through the masked crowd like a thread of intrigue. The chandeliers above cast a golden haze, illuminating feathered masks and silken gowns. But beneath the revelry, an undercurrent of tension simmered. Hercule Poirot, his black domino mask accentuating the keen glint in his eyes, stood near a marble column, his small frame a quiet contrast to the swirling grandeur. Captain Hastings hovered at his side, his own mask slightly askew, his expression a blend of excitement and apprehension. The discovery of Marie, alive but shaken, and her tale of her brother Jacques and the mysterious R had set Poirot's mind ablaze. The gala, he knew, was no mere celebration. It was the stage for the next act in this deadly drama. Poirot's gaze swept the room, cataloguing the players. Lady Evelyn Carrington, her silver mask catching the light, conversed with a diplomat, her smile as polished as her pearl brooch, but her posture rigid. Dr. Felix Reinhardt, released from Inspector Giraud's custody after Poirot's intervention, stood alone near the orchestra, his white mask stark against his dark suit, his fingers clutching a glass of champagne he did not drink. Miss Clara Beaumont, her crimson gown a beacon in the crowd, laughed too loudly with a young officer, her eyes darting as if seeking an escape. And somewhere, Poirot sensed, the elusive Jacques, or another agent of R, lurked, drawn by the promise of the diamonds hidden in Langley's room. "Mon ami," Poirot murmured to Hastings, "observe the masks. They conceal the face, but the eyes, the hands, the tilt of the head, these betray the heart. Tonight we shall see who flinches." Hastings nodded, though his brow furrowed. "But Poirot, how do we spot this R fellow? Everyone's disguised, and Jacques is long gone to Marseille, isn't he?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Perhaps, Hastings, but the diamonds remain, and where there is treasure, there is greed. Our R will reveal themselves if we watch." Poirot had arranged for Monsieur Dubois to keep Marie under discreet protection in the staff quarters, guarded by a trusted porter. Her testimony, her sighting of the package, her brother's involvement, and the name R had confirmed Poirot's suspicion that Langley's murder was tied to a smuggling operation. The note in the hollowed book, "Deliver to R at the gala," suggested a transaction planned for this very night. But the killer had struck first, disrupting the exchange. Was the murder a betrayal, a theft, or something more personal? Poirot's little grey cells churned, seeking the pattern. He moved through the crowd, his steps deliberate, his ears attuned to snatches of conversation. A woman's laugh, too sharp. A man's whisper, too urgent. Near the buffet, he overheard a fragment that made him pause. "The deal's off now, with Langley gone." The speaker, a portly man in a gold mask, slipped away before Poirot could approach, but the words lingered. The deal. Likely the diamonds. But who was meant to receive them? Poirot's attention returned to the suspects. He approached Lady Carrington first, bowing slightly. "Madame? A splendid evening, non? Yet I wonder if it brings you ease after such a tragedy." Her eyes, behind the silver mask, narrowed. "Monsieur Poirot, I find your interest tiresome. I had no love for Langley, but I did not kill him. My concerns are financial, not criminal." Her voice was ice, but Poirot noted the faint tremor in her hand as she adjusted her fan. "Financial, oui," he said smoothly. "A lost investment, perhaps, or a promised delivery that never arrived." Her lips parted, then closed tightly, and she turned away, her dismissal as sharp as a blade. Next, Poirot sought Dr. Reinhardt, who stood apart, his gaze fixed on the dancers. "Doctor," Poirot said, his tone conversational, "you are a man of science, yet this gala must seem frivolous after such events. Did you know of Langley's extracurricular dealings?" Reinhardt's mask hid his expression, but his voice was curt. "I study the mind, Monsieur Poirot, not the underworld. Langley was nothing to me." Yet his fingers tightened on his glass, and Poirot sensed a lie beneath the denial. He let the doctor retreat, knowing pressure would yield more later. Clara Beaumont was harder to pin down, her crimson figure flitting through the crowd. Poirot caught her at last near the terrace doors, her mask dangling from her hand, her face flushed. "Mademoiselle," he said softly, "you seem troubled. Is it the memory of Monsieur Langley that haunts you?" Her eyes, bright with unshed tears, met his. "I told you, monsieur, it was over between us. I was in my room, I swear." But her voice cracked, and Poirot pressed gently. "Yet you knew him well. Did he speak of a package, perhaps? Or a meeting at midnight?" Clara's hand flew to her throat, and she shook her head, too quickly. "No, nothing like that. Please, leave me be." She fled to the dance floor, her steps unsteady. Poirot returned to his vantage point, his mind assembling the pieces. The diamonds, the note, Marie's abduction, all pointed to a transaction gone awry. But the letter opener, the lipstick on the glass. These spoke of passion, of betrayal. He needed a catalyst to force the truth into the open. With a nod to Hastings, he approached Monsieur Dubois, who hovered nervously near the orchestra. "Monsieur," Poirot said, "I require the library for a small gathering. Summon Lady Carrington, Dr. Reinhardt, and Mademoiselle Beaumont, and ensure Marie is brought discreetly." The library, with its leather-bound tomes and sea-view windows, was a haven of quiet amid the gala's din. Poirot stood at its centre, his demeanour calm but commanding, as the suspects filed in, their masks removed, their faces a mix of curiosity and dread. Marie, escorted by the porter, looked pale but resolute. Hastings closed the door, standing guard like a loyal sentinel. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and measured, "a crime has been committed, and a second mystery, the disappearance of Mademoiselle Marie, has deepened our enigma. Let us consider the facts." He produced the velvet pouch from his pocket, its diamonds catching the lamplight. Gasps filled the room. Lady Carrington's hand flew to her mouth, Reinhardt's eyes narrowed, and Clara paled. "These," Poirot continued, "were found in Monsieur Langley's room, a fortune in uncut stones, meant for a certain hour at this gala." He held up the torn note. "This message, 'Meet me at midnight,' was Langley's last appointment, but someone met him first with a letter opener. And you, mes amis, each have a connection to this tragedy." He turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle, you loved Langley, but he betrayed you. Did you confront him, perhaps in a moment of rage?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I loved him, yes, but I didn't kill him. We argued, that's all, about his lies, his promises. I left him alive." Poirot's gaze shifted to Reinhardt. "Doctor, your interest in Langley was more than casual, no? A man of science. Yet you spoke of business in the library." Reinhardt's jaw tightened. "I told you it was nothing. A passing curiosity." Poirot nodded, then turned to Lady Carrington. "And you, madame, lost a fortune to Langley's schemes. Did you seek to reclaim it, perhaps with violence?" Her face flushed, but she remained silent, her eyes defiant. Poirot paced, his cane tapping softly. Marie saw a package, and her brother Jacques, a smuggler, sought to silence her. But the question remains, who is R? The room was silent, the tension palpable. Lady Carrington's composure cracked, her voice low. "You accuse without proof, monsieur." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Proof, madame, is like the tide. It comes if one waits." As the group dispersed, Poirot's mind was alight. The diamonds had stirred them, but the killer's identity remained just out of reach. The gala continued outside, its music a mocking counterpoint to the truth he sought. "Hastings," he said softly, "the net tightens. Tomorrow we shall cast it wider." Chapter 7. The final piece. The Riviera Hotel, its facade aglow under the Mediterranean moon, seemed to hold its breath as the gala's echoes faded into the night. Hercule Poirot, his mind a crucible of facts and suspicions, stood on the terrace, the sea's gentle rhythm a counterpoint to the urgency within him. The diamonds, the note, Marie's abduction, and the elusive R had woven a tapestry of deceit, but the final thread, the identity of Edward Langley's killer, remained just out of reach. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, joined him, his face etched with the strain of the day's revelations. "Poirot," he said, his voice low, "we're close, aren't we? But dash it, it's like chasing a shadow. Who's R? And who struck the blow?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with purpose. "Mon ami, the shadow takes form. The diamonds are the key, but the letter opener, the lipstick, these speak of a human heart, not merely a smuggler's greed. We must now search the shadows themselves." He turned, his cane tapping decisively. "To the basement, Hastings. There, I believe, we shall find the final piece. The hotel's basement, a labyrinth of storage rooms and forgotten corners, was a world apart from the opulence above. The air was cool, tinged with the musty scent of old wood and wine casks. Poirot, guided by the memory of Marie's rescue, moved with quiet determination, his small flashlight casting a narrow beam. Hastings followed, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. "What are we looking for, Poirot?" he whispered. "Marie's safe now, isn't she?" Poirot's voice was soft but firm. "Safe, oui, but her story is incomplete. Jacques, her brother, left traces, perhaps more than he intended. They returned to the storage room where Marie had been found, its door now ajar, the lock still bearing the marks of Poirot's earlier ingenuity. Inside, the crates and linens were undisturbed, but Poirot's keen eye caught a glint beneath a stack of folded tablecloths. He knelt, retrieving a small, tarnished key, its shape suggesting a lockbox or safe. "Voilà," he murmured, holding it to the light. "A key, Hastings, to something hidden, perhaps the killer's mistake." Their search continued, moving deeper into the basement. In a corner, half hidden by a pile of discarded furniture, Poirot found a wooden crate marked with a faint chalk symbol, a circle with a cross, a smuggler's mark he recognized from past cases. With Hastings' help, he pried it open, revealing a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were documents, ledgers detailing shipments of uncut gems, with Langley's initials scrawled alongside another set. R.C. Poirot's pulse quickened. "R.C.," he said softly. "Not Reinhardt, but perhaps Carrington." Hastings' eyes widened. "Lady Carrington, but she's a widow, a lady of means. Why would she—" Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Means, yes, but also losses. Her argument with Langley was no mere disagreement. These ledgers suggest she was entangled in his schemes, perhaps more deeply than she admitted. The documents listed dates, amounts, and destinations, including a shipment due at the gala, matching the note's instructions. But one entry stood out. A payment marked defaulted, dated the day before Langley's death. Poirot's mind raced. A betrayed partner, a desperate act. The pieces were aligning. Returning to the main hotel, Poirot sought Marie once more. She was in the staff kitchen, under the watchful eye of the porter, her face still pale, but her resolve stronger. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you have been brave, but I must ask more. Your brother, Jacques, did he ever mention a woman in Langley's dealings? A lady, perhaps, with wealth and influence?" Marie's eyes flickered with recognition. "Once, monsieur. He said Langley was afraid of a woman, someone who'd invested heavily, but was losing patience. He called her the Ice Queen." Poirot nodded, the image of Lady Evelyn Carrington's cold grey eyes vivid in his mind. "Merci, Marie. You have helped more than you know." He turned to Hastings. "We must confront our suspects again, but with care. The gala is over, but the truth awaits its unmasking." Poirot arranged a final gathering in the hotel's library, its walls a silent witness to the earlier confrontation. Lady Carrington, Dr. Reinhardt, and Clara Beaumont arrived, their faces weary, their masks long discarded. Inspector Giraud, grudgingly present at Poirot's insistence, stood by the door, his skepticism palpable. Marie, escorted by the porter, sat quietly, her presence a reminder of the stakes. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice steady, "the murder of Edward Langley is a puzzle nearly solved. The diamonds hidden in his room were to be delivered to R at the gala, but betrayal bred violence, and a letter opener became the instrument of death." He held up the key from the basement. "This unlocks more than a box. It unlocks the truth. The ledgers, marked with R.C., point to a partner in Langley's smuggling. Lady Carrington, shall we discuss your investment?" Lady Carrington's face drained of colour, her hands clenching the arms of her chair. "This is absurd, Monsieur Poirot. I lost money to Langley, yes, but I am no criminal." Poirot's eyes were unrelenting. You lost more than money, madame. You lost trust. The ledgers show you funded his operations, expecting a share of the diamonds. When he defaulted, you confronted him in room 312. The lipstick on the brandy glass. Yours, non? A careless touch in a moment of rage. Clara gasped. Reinhardt stiffened, and Giraud's eyes widened. Lady Carrington's voice was a hiss. You have no proof. Poirot produced the torn note. This, and Marie's testimony, place you in his room. You argued, you struck, perhaps not with intent to kill, but the result was the same. Tears welled in her eyes, and her composure shattered. He ruined me, she whispered. Promised wealth, then laughed at my losses. I went to demand my share, but he mocked me. The letter opener was there. I didn't mean to. Giraud stepped forward, his handcuffs ready, but Poirot raised a hand. One moment, Inspector. There is more. Jacques, Marie's brother, was Langley's courier. He abducted Marie to protect the operation, fearing she'd expose him. He is in Marseille, but he will be found. Marie sobbed softly, and Poirot's voice softened. Mademoiselle, your courage has helped us end this. As Giraud led Lady Carrington away, her defiance crumbling, Poirot turned to Hastings. The heart, mon ami, is a dangerous thing. Greed and betrayal. It is an old story, but always tragic. The library fell silent, the sea's whisper through the open window, the only sound. The Riviera's glamour had been stripped bare, revealing the human frailties beneath. Chapter 8. The curtain falls. The Riviera Hotel, its grandeur undimmed by the shadows of murder, basked in the morning light. The Mediterranean sparkling beyond, as if to wash away the sins of the night before. Hercule Poirot sat once more on the terrace, a steaming tisane before him, his impeccable suit a stark contrast to the weariness in his eyes. The arrest of Lady Evelyn Carrington and the unravelling of Edward Langley's smuggling scheme had brought the case to a close, yet Poirot's mind lingered on the human frailties that had woven this tragedy. Captain Hastings, seated opposite, stirred his coffee absently, his face a mixture of relief and lingering shock. "I say, Poirot," he ventured, "it's all tidied up now, isn't it? Lady Carrington, Jacques, the diamonds. Quite a tangle, but you sorted it out, as always." Poirot's moustache curved slightly, though his smile held a trace of melancholy. "Oui, mon ami. The tangle is undone, but not without cost. The heart, it betrays as often as it loves. And greed, greed is a poison that corrodes all it touches." He sipped his tisane, his gaze drifting to the sea, where gulls wheeled against the azure sky. The Riviera's guests, unaware of the full drama, resumed their leisurely routines, their laughter floating on the breeze. But Poirot felt the weight of the truth they would never fully grasp. The morning had brought further developments. Inspector Giraud, his pride bruised but his duty clear, had received word from Marseille. Jacques, Marie's brother, had been apprehended at the docks, the stolen diamonds recovered from a hidden compartment in his satchel. His confession, relayed by telegram, confirmed Poirot's deductions. He had been Langley's courier, tasked with delivering the gems to R.C. Lady Carrington at the gala. But Langley's betrayal, withholding her share, had sparked her rage, leading to the fatal confrontation in room 312. Jacques, fearing exposure after Marie's discovery of the package, had panicked and abducted her, hoping to silence her until the deal was complete. Poirot had visited Marie before breakfast, finding her in the staff quarters, her eyes red, but her spirit unbroken. "Monsieur Poirot," she had said, her voice steady, "I never thought Jacques would go so far, but I'm free now, thanks to you." Poirot had patted her hand, his manner gentle. "Mademoiselle, you have shown courage. Live well and leave the shadows to others." He had left her with a small sum from his own pocket, a gesture to ease her path, though he would never speak of it. In the library, where the final confrontation had played out, Poirot had met with Dr. Felix Reinhardt and Clara Beaumont one last time, ensuring no loose ends remained. Reinhardt, his composure restored, admitted to a fleeting curiosity about Langley's ventures, but denied any deeper involvement. "I study the mind, Monsieur Poirot," he said, his German accent clipped, "not the crimes of others." Poirot, sensing truth in his detachment, let him go, though he noted the doctor's haste to book a train to Berlin. Clara, still fragile from the ordeal, confessed to a final meeting with Langley, not at midnight, but earlier in the salon. "He was cruel," she whispered, twisting her handkerchief. "Said I was nothing to him, just a diversion. I slapped him and left. I swear that's all." Poirot believed her. The lipstick on the brandy glass, now clearly Lady Carrington's. A careless trace of her presence in room 312. He dismissed Clara with a kind word, urging her to focus on her upcoming role as Juliet, a part he sensed she would play with newfound depth. Monsieur Dubois, ever anxious about the hotel's reputation, approached Poirot on the terrace, his nervous tic subdued but present. "Monsieur Poirot, you have saved us from ruin. The guests, they talk of scandal, but they stay. How can I thank you?" Poirot waved a hand, his expression serene. "Monsieur, I'm sure your staff is cared for, especially young Marie. That is thanks enough." Dubois nodded, retreating with a bow, his relief palpable. As the sun climbed higher, Poirot reflected on the case's intricacies. The letter opener, a weapon of impulse, had spoken of Lady Carrington's desperation. The diamonds, hidden in a hollowed book, had revealed Langley's duplicity, and Marie's abduction had exposed the smuggling ring's reach. Each clue, from the torn note to the smudged lipstick, had been a step toward the truth, guided by Poirot's unerring logic. Yet he felt no triumph, only a quiet satisfaction that justice had been served. Hastings, finishing his coffee, broke the silence. "What now, Poirot? Back to London? Or will you actually take that holiday you came for?" Poirot chuckled softly, setting down his cup. "A holiday, Hastings. Perhaps a day or two, to savour the sea and the sun. But the little grey cells, they do not rest. There is always another puzzle waiting in the wings." As they rose to leave, the terrace filled with new arrivals, their voices bright with the promise of carefree days. Poirot adjusted his hat, his eyes lingering on the horizon. The Riviera Hotel, its secrets laid bare, stood as a testament to the fragility of human desires. And Hercule Poirot, ever the observer of those desires, walked back into its halls, ready for whatever mystery might next cross his path.